Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Barakahakwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word and truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure to the end. And to the few sincere Akwat diligently learning in silence, Shabbat Shalom. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson, and I'll be reading from an article on WHIO.com titled Department of Homeland Security Warns of Potential Attacks Amid Iran Operations, and best believe that there will be terrorist attacks on the streets of America. You just recently had that situation in Austin, which, as with everything, you got to, look at it from different angles. But regardless, there will be foreign, domestic, sleeper cell, terrorist attacks, whether they be naturally occurring or orchestrated by the powers that be. It's all according to biblical prophecy. But the article reads, the Department of Homeland Security has warned of potential lone wolf and cyber attacks. And that's another thing that's going to be ramping up out here more. Cyber attacks. You had another cyber attack on Amazon's AWS services and continued cyber attacks on these different, cell phone providers. And the other week I did a lesson on how, authorities are warning of potential cyber attacks on the U.S.'s agricultural systems amid the ongoing strikes in Iran, according to a law enforcement bulletin obtained by ABC News. Although a large-scale physical attack is unlikely, Iran and its proxies probably pose a persistent threat of targeted attacks in the homeland and will almost certainly escalate retaliatory actions or calls to actions if reports of the Ayatollah's death are confirmed, which, they already have been for, a few days now, according to the bulletin. In the short term, we are most concerned that Iran-aligned hacktivists will conduct low-level cyber attacks against U.S. networks, such as a website defacements and distributed denial of service attacks, officials said in the bulletin. The alert was issued on Saturday, a day before a gunman opened fire in Austin, Texas, and authorities are investigating whether or not the suspect was inspired by the situation overseas. Law enforcement sources told ABC News the suspect was wearing a sweatshirt with "Property of Allah" on it and underneath a shirt with Iran and the Iranian flag on it. As it says in 2 Corinthians 2 verse 11, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Hey, that's a little too many receipts to have, doing a terrorist attack. But regardless, hey, that took place, last New Year's. You had that situation on Bourbon Street down here, and it's only going to intensify as we get deeper and deeper into Jacob's trouble. And like I said at the beginning of the video, it's going to be coming from all angles, whether naturally occurring or orchestrated, whether foreign or domestic. And, Sleepy Joe didn't do America any favors by having those wide open borders during the end of his presidency, letting in people from, all different countries and all different walks of life in here. But, just like Trump is a puppet, Biden was a puppet. And that was all a part of the plan, by the elites in their controlled demolition of the United States of America. But regardless, hey, a lot of those people that came through the border, they're going to be getting that call soon to, start causing mayhem. And another thing, it was somewhere in California. It might have been in San Francisco or Los Angeles. The authorities busted a bunch of Chinese people that I believe they came across the border too, and they were in their apartment. They had a bunch of biological V's in there, and one of them was labeled Ebola. So, so many devastating and deadly things are about to come down the pipeline for you Americans. And this is the judgment of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai for the great pride. Not just you Americans have been walking in, but people globally. But this is Jeremiah 51, verses 12 to 14. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon, the virgin daughter of Babylon, Babylon the Great, the United States of America. Make the watch strong. Set up the watchmen. Prepare the ambushes. Ambushes, from people within the country getting activated and people from without the country waiting to get that call to be activated. And then, with all this excitement going on with Iran, people have forgot that there's damn near a whole cartel war going on the southern border, with Mexico. And a U.S. citizen has already been killed in the midst of that situation. For Yahweh hath both devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon. And as it says in 2 Esdras chapter 8, verse 50, for many great miseries shall be done to them in the latter times, because they have walked in great pride. And you Americans are the most prideful people on the face of the earth. You got this whole serious situation going on with Iran. And then a video just came out of a bunch of so-called black women, of course, in the army, doing a little TikTok video pretty much saying, look, we won World War I, we won World War II, so we not scared of you, Iran. Hey, keep that same energy when things really start to get moving out here. Verse 13, O thou that dwellest upon many waters, you got the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the Arctic Ocean to the north. And that many waters can also go into peoples. Read in Revelation 17, America being the great melting pot, abundant in treasures, being the richest nation, at least for the elites now on the face of the earth. Thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. Now listen closely. Yahweh of hosts hath sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee, preparing those ambushes. And, like I mentioned earlier, with Biden opening those borders, hey, that surely filled Babylon with men from China, from different countries in Africa, from different countries in the Middle East, from Europe, et cetera, et cetera. And, you had that one guy, I believe he was Syrian, who some people on the border were recording him. And he said, you people are so stupid. You don't know who I am now, but soon you will know who I am. And that's going to be the sentiment going forward with, theist attacks taking place on the streets of America. And, as the old saying goes, never let a good crisis go to waste. With a lot of things going forward, since the U.S. and Israel want a further war with Iran, anything that happens that can be blamed on Iran will be blamed on Iran. But best believe, Iran is going to get in some work on America as well, as they're doing right now, with these missile strikes over in Western Asia, hitting U.S. Military infrastructure and bases. I believe the death count of U.S. service members is up to 6 now. And hey, they're also going to touch the homeland as well, along with those other men who have filled up Babylon with as caterpillars. But this is 2 Esdras in the Apocrypha, chapter 15. I'm going to start at verse 29. Behold, an horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, so-called Middle East, Western Asia, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon the earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. All those Ishmaelite nations over there being prepared for the war of Armageddon, the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the conclusion of World War III. Verse 30, also the Carmanians, which is speaking of the Iranians, because ancient Carmania was in modern-day Iran, raging in wrath shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them. And there's going to come a point to where these different Arab nations are going to link up with Iran and going against the West. You've had some of these countries, I believe, it could be some other ones, but I believe it was at least Kuwait, the UAE, and maybe Saudi Arabia, complaining to the U.S. that they've been moving, troops and assets, out of bases in their country to help, defend Israel with these constant strikes happening against them. And they're like, look, you got us into this situation, but you're doing everything at the beck and call of Israel. Eventually, hey, they're going to completely turn against the U.S. and get with those Carmanians and join battle with them. And as it says, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. And, this is speaking of the spiritual Assyrians, America, just as it's known as Babylon the Great in the scriptures, America in some verses is known as Assyria, as well as spiritual Egypt, as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8. And they're going to, as it says, they're going to waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. That can include, strikes on U.S. bases over in Western Asia, and also strikes on the homeland, going back to Jeremiah chapter 51, verses 12 to 14. I will prepare the ambushes and fill thee with men as caterpillars. Sleeper cells over here, just waiting to get the call to, put in that work. Which is what this article's been warning about. And then, you had Sarah Adams, who's in the CIA, who was talking about things like this happening on the Andrew, what was that show? I think the Andrew Ryan show, where she was saying, we have reports that, these different Islamic extremist groups, soon are going to be doing attacks, on soft targets in America, populated areas, malls, stuff like that. And that was about a year ago. And she said, her original estimates of how many people actually came across the border was actually way smaller than what the numbers actually were. I think she was saying initially they thought it was about, 18,000 recently, but it's been, 30,000. Don't quote me on those numbers, just go look them up. Officials are also investigating whether the suspect had mental health issues. The bulletin said physical attacks are rare for those inspired by Iran. Lone offenders in the homeland have not historically been motivated by issues related to Iran, the IRGC, or Shia violent extremism. However, the existential threat to the Iranian regime and increased U.S. or Israeli actions could prompt some U.S.-based violent extremists or hate crime perpetrators to attack targets perceived to be Jayish, pro-Israel, or linked to the U.S. government or military, officials said in a bulletin. Hey, sedition, which brings us back to 2 Ezra chapter 15. I'm going to read verses 15 to 16. For the sword in their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another. And that can go into many things, including, citizens fighting against citizens, domestic teists causing attacks in this country, as well as foreign teists, attacking American citizens, and swords in their hands. And that modern day sword is the gun. For there shall be sedition among men. And the definition for sedition is conduct or speech inciting open rebellion against a ruling authority or monarch. What did it just say? U.S. or Israeli actions could prompt some U.S.-based violent extremists to attack targets linked to the U.S. government or military, officials said in a bulletin. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another, and they shall not regard their kings nor princes, which is these governments, as well as the authorities that uphold the system, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Derek Mayer, the former assistant special agent in charge of the Secret Service's Chicago field office, said law enforcement is always on alert for a lone offender. I think law enforcement authorities are concerned about attacks happening every day. And obviously yesterday, with the bombings taking place in Iran, the attacks could come even at a higher rate. But it's your schools, it's your churches, it's at your airports, soft targets, such as what Sarah Adams was talking about. Mayer, now the chief security officer and vice president of executive protection at P4, said, the current threat environment in the United States and across the world it's very dangerous right now, but it's also, to say, the last quarter of a century. Since the September 11th attacks of 2001, the landscape across the United States and also across the world has been very dangerous, and it's only going to get more dangerous because we are quickly coming into the times of Jacob's trouble, a time worse than any other point in human history. But that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere, Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time, Shalom.